All right, y'all. In today's video, we are going to be ranking the best small forwards, or I guess, sorry, every starting small forward in the Western Conference here on this tier list. Now, I will say some of these guys are a little bit tougher to decide who is considered the starting small forward on some teams than others. Some of these guys have only recently become the starter. Some of these guys, Kawhi, have only recently come back from injuries. But I did my best to put together the most cohesive list I could of who I consider each team's starting small forward right now in the NBA. And before we hop into the video, if you haven't already, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Help me push towards the 2,000 subscriber mark on the channel. I upload every single day, multiple NBA videos a day. Would really appreciate it if y'all do subscribe. Without further ado, let's hop right into it. And we're going to start off with the first small forward on the list, which is Lu Dort. This list is in order from the number 1 seed to the number 15 seed, so that there is no other suspicion about the order or anything like that. But Lu Dort, he is awesome as a 3-and-D player. He plays his role at a very high level, and honestly, he plays his role such a high level that I actually kind of am considering stud. Because here's the thing, one of the best on-ball defensive players in the league. He is a real terror on ball. I mean, he really harassed Donovan Mitchell into a real struggle, like 3 of 16 earlier this week. And he's a 40% three-point shooter and has been a 40% three-point shooter for the past 2 seasons. Has really elevated his game as a shooter these last couple of years, which is huge because yes, his role has gone down in terms of the amount of shots he takes by a large amount with the influx of guys like Jalen Williams and Chet Holmgren and other guys to be the offensive weapons. And obviously the emergence of SGA is one of the best offensive players in the league, period. But he is a very, well, solidly high volume, very efficient three-point shooter and one of the best defensive guards in all of basketball. That by itself provides a ton of value at the small forward position. I don't think averaging less than 10 a game without much playmaking or anything like that I can really put him in stud, but I want to. I think meh is almost a little too low for Lu Dort, and I might actually move him up. We'll see how the list progresses. But Dillon Brooks, honestly, is a similar style of player to Lu Dort, a harassing, aggressive on-ball defensive player. Do I find him annoying? Absolutely. Do I think he's a good player? 100%. He's averaging 13.5 a game, 41%, 38% from 3. Love the fact that he's shooting the 3-ball this well this year. It's the best he's ever shot it in his career, especially on anything close to this volume. I mean, he shot 37% his second year, but that was on 2.5 attempts a game. Whereas now he's shooting almost over 6 threes a game at 38%. And look, 13.4 a game. He's not a super high scorer, high volume scorer, and that's okay. He doesn't need to be. It's similar to Lu Dort. In previous years in his career, he's needed to be a higher volume scorer and has been less efficient. At this point, he has settled into his role really nicely. And yes, he has moments where he shot chucks a little bit, but I think those moments are fewer and further between than they used to be. And he is another really high level three-point shooter on pretty high volume and a really good on-ball defender. Very similar player to Dort. Both of them feel like Meh's a little low for them, but I think they're both really good players. Jalen Wells is having a really good rookie season. Honestly, might be the MVP favorite right now. Not MVP, rookie of the year favorite. Really having a great year. 11, 3.5, almost 2 assists a game, 44%, 37% from 3. Shout out to Jalen Wells. Was not a guy that I expected to be an impact rookie at all. It's a 2nd-round pick, but has been really good. Another guy who's good defensively. He's not great defensively, I wouldn't say like Lu Dort and Brooks are, but offensively I've been pretty impressed by him as a rookie. 37% from 3 on almost 5 attempts a game. He's 44% from the field. He does a little bit with the ball in his hands as well, which is impressive. I mean, the 1.7 to 1.2 assist turnover ratio isn't incredible or anything, but I've been kind of impressed with him as a player his rookie season. He gets the hardest defensive responsibility on a night-to-night basis for the Grizzlies. And while he may not be the defensive player that the Dillon Brooks or Lu Dort are, he's really playing well for a guy this young and this inexperienced at a high level. And really very impressive rookie season for Jalen Wells. He 100% is not in the lowest tier. Like, I think meh is totally fair for him as well. A lot of guys that I like in this meh tier so far. Michael Porter Jr. is having one of the best seasons of his career. Absolutely. I think he has to go in that stud tier. Really, I mean, a lot of players in the Nuggets have struggled this year. Michael Porter Jr. is not one of them. Absolutely. 19 points, 6.7 rebounds, and 2.6 assists on 52.4% from the field and 42.3% from 3. Really high level shot making efficiency this season. He's been 60% from 2, which, I mean, playing with Jokic certainly helps in terms of your efficiency numbers in general, because you're going to get better shots and more good looks. But he's averaging the most he's ever averaged in his career alongside his 2nd season, and doing it on pretty close to career high efficiency. I mean, that 2nd year he had was pretty ridiculous. But since then, he has not been the same player with some injury issues and things of that nature. But I really think he's been great this year. 19 points a game on great efficiency. rebounding the ball at a high level, which he's been a high level rebounder now for a couple of years. I think his size at the small forward position is something that provides some value as well. Because yes, he's not an elite on-ball defender the way that some of these other guys on this list might be, but he provides a different level of switchability and versatility with his size than some of these other guys do. And as a rebounder as well, it provides real value. And I think he's a pretty key piece to this Nuggets team, and really has been one of their best players this season. So I think stud is totally fair for him. Klay Thompson, a couple years ago, would have absolutely been in stud. At this point in his career, I think he's been a little better defensively than people give him credit for the Mavs. I really think he's fit his role pretty well, but his role has certainly shrunk. He's a role player at this point. He's a good role player. 14 points, 3.5 rebounds, 2 assists, 41%, 38% from three. On any given night, he can get hot and make big shots, and he still has those Klay magic moments, no doubt about it, where he'll come out and make 2, 3, 4 threes in a row. He had one of them against the Lakers earlier this week, and you could tell it opened up the offense, because when Klay gets hot, there is very few things like it in the history of basketball than Klay Thompson when he's hot shooting the basketball. Now, for his season, he's still only 38% from three. Started the season kind of slow. Recently has been back to being a little more like Klay Thompson, about 40% since December. Shooting 8 threes a game, still an incredibly efficient free throw shooter as well, although admittedly on low volume. And I mean, his assist to turnover ratio really isn't bad. I don't think he tries to do too much this year. Scoring average is certainly a little bit down, and his role has certainly shifted at this point in his career, but I think he's a really good player. And I think especially when Luka and Kyrie are healthy, he fits so well next to those guys. And I mean, he's always going to have one of those explosions every once in a while where he's going to go for 6 or 7 threes and almost 30 points. And I mean, there's just nobody like Klay Thompson when it comes to shooting the basketball. Even at this point in his career, he is still a threat, unlike very few players in the sport shooting that ball. LeBron James, come on. He's the king, man. The best small forward on this list to this day. He's 40 years old, and he's still one of the best players in the sport, probably a top 10 player in basketball, averaging 24, 7.7, 8.8 assists per game, and doing it on incredible efficiency. Last season was a career high shooting the three for LeBron by a pretty significant chunk at 41% on 5 attempts a game. And this year, he's shooting 5.7 attempts a game, and he's still at 38.5% from the three-point line. Scoring is down a little bit this past couple seasons, the lowest since his rookie season this year, and yet he has still played awesome. Defensively, he's certainly not the player he once was. He does have good defensive moments late in games, in huge moments at times, things of that nature. He can have moments, but generally speaking, he's a bad defender, 100%. He is certainly not the defensive player he once was at all. At the same time, the guy is still an absolutely incredible player. He's one of the most impactful offensive players in the league. He's remarkably efficient. He still impacts the game in so many ways as a rebounder and a passer and all the different things he does. You can't not put LeBron James at best of the best. Come on now. This man is 40 years old, still playing at a ridiculously high level. Jaden McDaniels. This is going to be a tough list because I think I'm going to have a lot of guys in that med tier. But Jaden McDaniels, honestly, this year with the way he shot the ball, I don't know. We'll see. Defensively, he's still a really good player. I get it. He's at 9 points, 4.5 rebounds, 43, 32 from three. That's not great. For a team that already kind of struggles with spacing with Julius Randle's inconsistency, Rudy Gobert's complete non-ability to shoot the ball. I mean, Mike Conley shot the three well this year, but offensively is kind of a non-factor. And look, I really do like Jaden McDaniels. I think he's had a good year defensively. I mean, he's always going to have good years defensively, right? Like, he's averaging a steal and a half a game. He's still one of the more impactful wing defenders in basketball, probably. The shooting is down this year, 100%. I mean, it was down last year, too. I think like almost 22, 23 might have been a little bit of an anomaly there, where he was almost 40% from three. Last couple of years have not been great, but he's really down this year, down to about 32% from three again. Scoring as a whole has gone down this year. He just, offensively, he struggled, man. He absolutely has. And he's been one of the bigger liabilities, I think, on the Timberwolves. One of those less talked about reasons why they've struggled this season. He's kind of a non-factor on the offensive end of the court most nights. And I don't know, man. Great defender, but I'd rather right now have Dylan Brooks, Lou Dort, guys like that. I'm sorry, Jaden McDaniels, but I don't see it. This year has not been your year. Kawhi Leonard. This is a controversial one because he's played so little, and yet you can't not put him in best, right? Like, Kawhi, I know he's barely played this season. He played 2 games, right? He's 10 points, 2.5 rebounds, 1.5 assists. But you can't take from this season when you're ranking Kawhi. He played 68 games last year, and he was 24 a game. He was an all-star, second team All-NBA, 52% from the field, 41% from three. on 5 attempts a game. He's clearly hasn't lost that 3-point stroke. He's made 5 of 10 threes so far this season. Like, yes, this is a weird spot to be with Kawhi because he's played so little this season. But maybe, unless I'm just not supposed to rank him at all, like, I feel like he has to go best to best because you have to go off of the previous body of work with a guy like Kawhi. And even with the injury issues he's had these last few seasons, he's still been one of the couple best small forwards in basketball. Absolutely. When he's healthy, he's a top 10 player, like legitimately. I think even these last couple seasons, when healthy, been a pretty much top 10 player in the league. And so I'm going to go off of previous knowledge with Kawhi and the fact that he's still a good defender. And I mean, even in the 2 games he's played so far this season, I've seen a couple of moments defensively that make me go, yeah, he's still Kawhi. He's still injury prone. He's getting older, but he's still probably, if he can stay healthy, going to be a 20+ point per game scorer, going to be a high level defender, going to do a lot of things well. Still an impactful player for sure. DeMar DeRozan DeMar's not really, in my opinion, a player that is, his play style is conducive to winning at this point in his career. He's a 20 point per game scorer. He's 4 assists, 4 rebounds a game, but he can't shoot. I mean, he can't shoot at a high level anyway. He's shooting more threes these last couple seasons slightly, but he's still only at 2.5 threes a game at 30% this year. I'd love to put him higher, and generally with a 21 point per game scorer, I would. And his assist turnover ratio is good, and he does play defense well. And I mean, he is a really good player. Like, he's a better pure basketball player than any of the guys in Matt here, but I just don't think he's all that conducive of a player to winning. I don't know if a winning team can really employ DeMar DeRozan at this point in his career, unless he takes some sort of huge financial discount. But for what he gets paid, is he really a winning player for that evaluation? I don't really think so. And maybe that's harsh to say. He's the best player in Matt, but for what his role is and how I think his lack of shooting impacts a team as what's supposed to be a tertiary option, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, it's a tough one, and I think I'm going to move him up just because. No, I'm not. I'm not gonna lie. This is gonna be. Some people might disagree with me. I'm leaving him in Matt. I'm just sticking my gut. I just don't think that he is the most conducive to winning style of player at this point in his career, despite the good averages and the good assist turnover ratio. That shooting inability and the lack of spacing he provides it hurts. It absolutely does. Andrew Wiggins, 16.4 a game, 4.4 rebounds, 2.3 assists, has had a really great bounce back season after a couple of rough years in a row, in all honesty. Post championship, he was an all-star a couple of years ago and deservedly so. And honestly, the year after that, even in a smaller sample size, 37 games, was still pretty good. Last year, he struggled. 36% from 3, just wasn't quite the same defensively. Really didn't feel like he was quite as impactful across the board defensively. I mean, he was the second best player in the playoffs for a championship team 3 seasons ago. And honestly, the Warriors are still struggling this year. It ain't Andrew Wiggins this year. He's having a good year. He's almost 40% from 3 on 5 attempts a game, having himself a very solid season. Assist to turnover ratio is 2-1. Rebounding wise, he's not great, but he's not bad. I think Wiggins is a winning player. Maybe this is going to be a hot take. I'm putting him above DeRozan. I think this is going to be might be an unpopular opinion. I think Wiggs kind of a stud. Like, I like him. I think he's a good player. Harrison Barnes has been a great veteran addition to the San Antonio Spurs. Him and Chris Paul have really elevated the floor of this team with their veteran leadership and consistency. And he's 11, 3.7, 1.5, almost 41% from 3. Again, really high level shooter, just great veteran player who knows how to put the ball in the basket at a pretty high level and plays his role super solidly. Certainly not a Buns tier player, and yet I feel like you absolutely couldn't argue any higher than Matt either. So to me, Harrison Barnes, I know there's a very large Matt tier here, and I might wind up moving up tomorrow at the end of the video. We'll see. But I think Harrison has to go in that Matt tier. Ryan Dunn, I'm sorry, you just haven't proven enough to me. He started his career shooting the 3-ball really well his first few games. Since then has just not. He's down to 30% from 3, only averaging 6 on 3. He just recently got added to the starting lineup permanently, replacing Bradley Beal, and he just has not shot the 3-ball well as of late. It's the biggest thing. Really, all season besides the first couple weeks, he has not been a high-level 3-point shooter at all. It was the biggest criticism of his game coming out of college, and while he is a very good defender and a guy who I think is going to have a long future in the league, he's got to shoot the ball better. As of right now, there's no argument that he's not in that lowest tier. Jeremy Grant is not, in my opinion, a winning player either at this point in his career. I just don't. Maybe he can become the defensive guy he used to be, but at this point, I don't know. Maybe it's me, but I just don't see it happening anymore for Jeremy Grant. If he was in a different environment, different culture, maybe. But he's 15, 3 and 2, 38, 38. Like, the efficiency's fine from the 3, but from the 2, he's 38%. He's not really attacking the rim with force, and he's certainly not efficient in a 2-point range anymore. Effective field goal percentage is really, really poor. He's not great as a playmaker by any means. Defensively, he's fine, but nothing special anymore. Just has kind of fallen off a good chunk this year on a bad Portland team and still struggling as much as he has. I would take everybody in my tier above him. I'm not a fan of Jerami Grant, especially with the contract. He's making a lot of money to be heck average, like such an average player this year. I think he's going down that buns tier, legitimately. That may sound crazy, but I think it's fair. Lauri Markkanen, you have struggled a lot this season. I am still probably going to wind up moving him up into that stud tier, but this has not been the same type of season for Lauri Markkanen this year. I mean, he's still 26 and 2 on 43-37. Last couple of years, there's 23.2. He was 48%, 40% from three. The year before that, he's 50% from the field, almost 39% from three, averaging 25.6 a game, 8.6 rebounds. Like, he was so good for Utah a couple of years ago. Won Most Improved Player for a reason. He absolutely deserved it too. He's still a very good player. I didn't think he's a winning player too. He's just in a terrible market, but I think he's, at this point, he's not quite as much of a sure thing stud player as he used to be. But again, on this list, I think he's got to go stud. And I think DeMar does too, to be totally honest. I feel bad not putting in that stud tier. People are going to be mad at me about that one in the comments anyway. And I get that his play style is not the most, I guess you could call it meta at this point in his career, what you expect from most small forwards, but it does get the job done. And Brandon Ingram, honestly, despite playing for a terrible Pelicans team, has been pretty good this year. Efficiency from three has been nice. He's averaging 22, 5, and 5. I mean, honestly, I thought he had played pretty well. He got hurt by Lou Dort landing on Dort's foot about a month ago and hasn't played since. But prior to that, I really thought he was having a pretty good bounce back year. Last year was the worst in several seasons for Brandon Ingram, and this year has been a nice little bounce back for him. A guy who doesn't seem to have a lot of trade value, but I feel like maybe should, because I feel like he's the type of player that could potentially impact a playoff team in a high level. And you know what? I'm also going to put him in that stud tier. I think there's more in Brandon Ingram than we give him credit for sometimes. I do think he is actually a guy who could contribute to winning at a higher level, potentially. Look, we've seen that in New Orleans before. They've been feisty and competitive in the past. This year's just been such a disaster with all the different injuries and all the different struggles. I'm not really holding that against BI. I actually think he's had a pretty good bounce back season. So with that being said, that's going to do it for this list. I hope y'all did enjoy. If you did, make sure you hit that like button, leave a comment, and subscribe. I'll be back with more NBA content very, very soon. I appreciate y'all. Peace.